Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with episode 2 of Kid Cosmic. So this is a donation reward for Gizmo, and we recently reacted to the first episode in the donation reward appreciation week, where we previewed a bunch of these first episodes for a bunch of upcoming donation reward reactions. Now, you may be wondering, if you hadn't seen the previous reaction, where's Symphogear? Why is Symphogear just done? Are you dropping it? The answer is no. I'm taking a break from it because it was bumming me out. that sounds a little silly, but I'm being completely serious too. Like, there's a lot of shows that I've watched over my time reacting where it's like there's just a lot of intense, emotional, heavy shit going on. I often look to Doom Patrol as kind of the biggest example of that, where it gets my mood down, and not because it's a bad show. In fact, both Doom Patrol and Symphogear are great shows, but it brings my mood down in a way that it makes it hard to want to get to it. It makes it hard for me to have the motivation to continue reacting. And while Doom Patrol got way too heavy for me, and I did have to drop that eventually. Symphogear, it's just at the moment, at the time, because of how fast the season was going and just throwing stuff at us constantly. I needed a break. I needed some time to just step back, calm down, and be able to bring myself back into a mindset where it's not going to make me want to possibly drop it. Because if I get too upset at a series reacting to it like that, it's going to become more and more possible that I'm going to drop it rather than just put it on hold or whatnot. So that's why I do put things on hold after partway through a season or whatnot. Just because it helps me refresh myself and come back into the series in a better mindset to where it's not going to cause me issues. Because for those who may not know, I am autistic and I have a lot of mental and emotional issues as it is. I suffer from depression and anxiety. I have a lot of just troubles handling certain things. So sometimes it's best for me to take a step back, have a breather, and come back to it later. And it's like there's still other shows I'm reacting to now that have heavy stuff in them, but Symphogear was just going really hard, really quickly, and it's just like that last episode I reacted to, episode 5, I believe it was, specifically, just was like a lot, and it just I couldn't, I needed a break right then. But I will come back to it. I'm very excited. We're just going to take a break and get to this show in between, because this series, Kid Cosmic, is a lot more lighthearted. It may have some more heavy stuff in it, but it's going to be presented in a more lighthearted way, like a lot of these kinds of shows tend to do. This is a Craig McCracken show, so comparing it to the Powerpuff Girls, there were some episodes of Powerpuff Girls that touched on some pretty notably heavy topics. And there was even some episodes that were scary. Like, for a kid watching that, I remember the Abracadabra episode. It's like, watching that as a kid, that fucked me up, honestly. It gave me recurring nightmares. Courage the Cowardly Dog was also really good at that. But talking about Powerpuff Girls because of the Craig McCracken connection, it legitimately gave me nightmares. And there were other episodes that touched on some pretty heavy topics. Like, there was the one with the girl that the Powerpuff Girls befriend, who mentions that she was an accident. And it's like, but the way it's presented isn't heavy. It's presented in more of a jokey way, a kind of goofy, cartoony way to make it easier to handle, and especially for children watching, to not like thrust that heavy kind of shit on them too early. But it's still there as a joke for the parents watching with their kids and everything, that they'll understand and find the humor in, basically. Um, Even if like real life situations like that, not really as humorous. But yeah, so even if that kind of stuff is in this series, which I don't actually know if it is, because all I know from this series is literally what the first episode showed us. But if it is, it's probably going to be more in that way. Probably more told more in that kind of regard. So, like I said, we reacted to the first episode back when we did the donation reward appreciation week. Let's talk about it. So we have this kid, who I believe is named Kid, which is an unfortunate name for a child. But he is kind of this wild child, very imaginative, very fun-loving, likes to go on adventures, playing around, just having fun. Like kids tend to do. There's this neighbor girl who he doesn't seem to have a bad relationship with, but he treats her like a younger kid, and he's not. I don't know if it said his age in the first episode. I don't remember, but I would say he's probably around 10 to 12, somewhere in that range, while the other girl was probably more like 5. So he's notably older than her. But it's just kind of funny, like having a kid treat a younger kid as a kid. You know what I mean? I hope I explained that well enough. But then there's this like this girl who works at this like teenage girl who works at her mother's diner, and her mother wants her to take over and everything, and she just is bored by it. She wants to go out and see the world and see big cities and stuff. She reminds me a lot of Gloria from Big City Greens, which I need to get back to that series. But she reminds me of her, and Gloria is my favorite character in what I've seen of Big City Greens, so that's a good thing. But she likes getting kind of wrapped up in kids' little misadventures because it's fun. It breaks out from the monotony that this town normally has. And so we then have kind of a Green Lantern story where alien comes down, kid finds these power rings, which, Green Lantern ring, and utilizes the powers. He gains like this telekinesis, which is kind of similar to Green Lantern powers, not quite the same, but and then we have the other powers and see what they can do. The girl from the diner, I don't remember her name right now, but she the ring that she ends up using can create portals. And we also have, at the end of the episode, we see like the little girl ends up becoming giant, presumably from one of the power rings. I don't remember exactly how it all went down. It's been like a few weeks or so. I don't know. But yeah, and so we're going to have all these different powers. There's 7 of them, I want to say. So we're going to have 7 characters. Now, one of them might be the alien guy that they have kind of dealt with right now, who is voiced by Tom Kenny, which was pretty easy to recognize pretty quickly. Tom Kenny has one of those voices that is pretty recognizable, even though some of his actual voices are different. Like Penguin is different from Ice King, and both of those are different from SpongeBob. But it's like, you can still recognize that it's Tom Kenny. He's probably going to join them. So there's 4 at least. Will the girl's mom join them? maybe kid's grandfather. I don't remember if he was actually his grandfather or not, but I don't know. It's just like it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I think this is 3 seasons, and I believe it is a completed story. And it is a story-based series rather than episodic, which makes it very different than I think pretty much all of Craig McCracken's previous works. Like Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home, it's like these were all episodic shows. New monster of the week, new situation every time. Occasionally there'd be a two-parter, but you get the gist. And so this one being more story focused is going to be really interesting to see from someone like Craig McCracken. Just for comparative sake. But I'm very excited. I'm very interested to see how this goes. And like I said, this is a lot lighter of a series, so it's going to be a good thing to bring me back from the insane heaviness that Symphogear has gone into already this season. But we will be going right back to Symphogear once we're done with this. Whether we end up taking a break for this series as well, or whether we just blast through the season and then come back to season 2 at a later date. That's the plan right now. That we're gonna get through this, no matter how much we end up doing. We're gonna get through this, then we'll come back to Symphogear. So yeah. Just updating everyone for those who may not have known. Because maybe they don't watch the Symphogear reactions, or maybe they don't listen to my afterthoughts or something. I don't know. Either way, we're going to get into this and see what this next episode has in store for us. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then it fades back in. Everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, this was a direct continuation off of the first episode. And another thing I noticed, another thing that separates this from, Powerpuff Girls or Foster's Home, I believe both of those shows had, 11-minute episodes. There were 2 segments per episode, basically. Like a lot of episodic shows have done and whatnot. But with this, it is a full 22-minute episode. And it is, serialized. So it gives it a very different feel from Craig McCracken's previous works, but at the same time, it still very much feels like a Craig McCracken series. The same kind of humor, the same kind of energy, the same kind of characters, just obviously the specifics are different. And I really like that, because I believe I've most likely talked about this in the first episode one, but I grew up with this shit. I grew up with Craig McCracken's shows. Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home, those were my shit growing up. I loved those. And that was why I was so hard on the reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, too. Why I hated it so much, because it very much ruined the Powerpuff Girls. The original is still great, but you know what I mean. And now in this, we get a newer series with this kind of humor and everything, with an art style that's very much inspired by the likes of comics and various things like that. It has and not just a comic book kind of feel to it, but even a newspaper comic, a funny comics, a funny pages kind of thing. It kind of has that feel to it too. the characters are all pretty entertaining, pretty likable, and they all feel genuine. You look at this episode. You look at Y la Niña Gigantica, um, and Rosa acts like a 4-year-old. You see in so many shows where where child characters are either way too smart or just act well beyond their years. It's a very common thing. I've talked about it in various other videos, but it's always been a thing that I've never been the biggest fan of most of the time. Um, so I like it when we have a character who is a 4-year-old but acts like a 4-year-old. It's just like this is just a 4-year-old. It's like the playfulness, the not really understanding that she's doing anything wrong, wanting to be friends with everyone, wanting to play with everyone, not realizing how dangerous her actions are and everything. Just like running around and giggling. Yeah, she feels like a 4-year-old. And like, I've worked in like some daycare settings and whatnot. I've worked with kids like this. And yeah, I very much believe this is one of the most accurate depictions in one of these animated series that I've seen. She's realistic. Minus, obviously, the massive growth spurt, you could say. But you know what I mean, just in her depiction as a character. Kid very much feels his age, or again, in the ballpark, 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. Joe feels like a natural teenager who's enjoying the ride, but also, trying to keep things under control. These characters feel very genuine, and I really like that. It helps make this series just able to be connected with a lot easier. I find myself just enjoying it more because these feel like people rather than cartoony characters. But you do have the cartoony character too with Chuck. Chuck is more cartoony and silly and over the top, and he balances that out a bit, and it's pretty cool in that regard. Papa G's like a character you've seen in a lot of things. He's the wise old mentor type of guy. He's smart, he's kind, he's helpful, and he's surprisingly just as into this kind of stuff. He's just as much a goofball, and he's very willing to get involved, and he's not judgmental or mean about it, and I like that. I like him so far. Obviously, this entire episode was pretty entirely focused on calming down Rosa, and the big evolution, I guess you could say, of the episode was Kid changing his mind on Rosa. From him seeing her as a nuisance to him coming around and understanding how brave and strong she can be and how much of an asset she can be for the team. And I like that. I like that kind of character growth. I believe that a character should be allowed to make mistakes. A character should be allowed to do wrong and even bad things. Having a character who's perfect is boring, for one, but it's also just not believable because no one is perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does bad things in their lives. And it's how they handle things afterwards that really, how do I put this? It shows who they really are. And I use myself as an example a lot, but it's personal experience, and I can speak to it a lot easier than trying to use someone else, I have done bad things. I've said bad things. I've definitely been on the wrong side of a lot of important issues and whatnot in my life. And I've had to learn. People have helped me, but in the end, I had to be the one to change. I had to see that I was in the wrong and fix that. I had to show that I was willing to better myself. And Kid goes through kind of the same thing here. He's being an absolute jerk to Rosa to the point where he makes her cry and run off. But after she comes back and helps them and saves them and everything, he realizes he was wrong and he apologizes and even calls her his friend. And it shows that he's willing to change, that he's willing to grow, that he's willing to admit his mistakes and be better. And I like a hero like that. In fact, I think that's the best kind of hero. One who understands that they're not perfect, that they, in some cases, need others to help them, but also need to make these decisions to better themselves on their own. That's a great hero. And so I really like that. I really enjoy the character work that they're going with here. Also, again, just the humor and the goofiness of this episode was just really classic Craig McCracken. It felt very fun and nostalgic, and just, I had a blast with it. I was enjoying myself the entire time. This is definitely a good series for what I wanted to get to it for at the moment. Calming down and just having fun while I take a break from Symphogear. And I think that this is the perfect series for that. I chose well. Like, again, even if it does end up bringing in some more serious threats and more serious plot points, it's gonna present it in a very fun, energetic, enjoyable way that allows it to still have that kind of tone and nature to it without actually going too far and making it too serious. So I think even at its most serious, it's still going to work for me in terms of, taking this break from something a lot heavier. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 2 of Kid Cosmic y la Niña Gigantica? Let me know down in the comments below. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.